You think you know Danny Trejo? You're going to get to know Danny Trejo. Inmate number 1. Welcome to the Film Threat Podcast. I am Chris Gore. I am pleased to have on the show today Jhod Cardinal and Adam Scorgie, the producers behind Inmate number 1. It's the Danny Trejo story. It's who's not a fan of Danny Trejo? I can't think of anybody. Children from Spy Kids are fans of Danny Trejo, in addition to just so many roles he's done have become iconic. Obviously, Machete being probably the most notable, the one that everybody knows. But you guys have produced a remarkable documentary that, I'll just say, just having known of Danny's career, and I knew a little bits of his story, having heard an interview with him on Howard Stern, you really get to know Danny intimately, how he's involved in the community, what his experience was growing up. And I will say that there are moments where I got really choked up watching this film. What went into putting this whole thing together, your relationship with Danny, and both of you are these really these producers that have put together some just amazing biographical documentaries. And this one is the only one that I'm personally familiar with, but I have to say, guys, this is award-winning documentary filmmaking right here. Just the level of intimacy. I'm just going to keep gushing, but please.
We're not saying anything. We're enjoying it.
Okay, that's good. That's good. But this documentary, which is getting a wide release on it's early July
7th.
July 7th, is so good because they're just things about Danny I didn't know. Which explain, just also just seeing his journey from the inside is so fantastic. What was your relationship like with him, and how did you guys put all the pieces together to come up with what is just an amazing biographical doc?
Well, I think, Chris, if I can just say first, I love how you felt how in depth it was, and I'll let Adam talk a little more to that question, but we tried really hard to make this about Danny's life and not about a Hollywood career. So you learn what he was like when he was, a young boy, a teenager, struggling while he was in prison. So it's nice that you appreciated that much, because we could have made this a very glitzy kind of made for TV documentary, but this is meant for, a theatrical audience, long, like telling the story, bringing out his personal life. So I really appreciate that comment. And Adam, I know you know him a little more intimately, so I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, Chris, it's always great to hear this from you and others that have seen the film that are really noticing things that our director, Brett Harvey, fought hard for, right? Is really making sure that this was Danny telling the story mostly. We have some great characters and some other people that had served time and been through the prison system and had met Danny in there, which was tough because Danny's 76. So a lot of the people, unfortunately, a lot of people that he knew growing up or knew from prison are not around anymore. Either they passed away from drugs or still in prison. So, we really fought hard for those moments, and it all came about with one of our other producers, Rocky Medalliar. We were on the set of a movie that we were filming in Utah called Cartel 2045. And Rocky goes, he's like, Adam, he's like, you're always doing the docs, and we've done a few together. He's like, you should do something on Danny. And I only knew Danny from what most people that recognize his face. I know him from Desperado and Machete and Heat. And I only knew his face. I didn't know his story. And I remember at first being like, well, it takes more than just being an actor to do a doc. And then Rocky was like, Adam, you have to look at Danny's personal story. It is amazing. And when you look at this guy that was facing execution in prison and, was addicted to heroin from the time he was 12, 13 years old and was doing armed robberies, when you didn't even think most people could hold a gun, we were like, wow, this story could be this amazing award-winning doc. And we dove into it. And then once we met Danny and you see how he's nothing like the character he portrays now, he's so honest and open, as you see in the film, and willing to share all of his stories about running protection rings and surviving in prison and doing drugs and, all the violence he grew up around. We were like, okay, we have to do this. So Brett, our director, created really great pitch book. And when we sat down with Danny, he loved it so much that he was like, okay, guys, I'm in. Now just convince my agent, and I'm not giving the pitch book back to you either. It's mine. And we're like, yeah, we brought that for you anyway.
Well, I mean, it's amazing that Danny did not necessarily have traditional training as an actor, right? Or a stunt person. I mean, his training was being a fighter in prison. And Adam, you have some experience as a fighter. Am I wrong? Did I read that correctly?
I have a little bit. I have more experience outside of the ring, unfortunately, similar to Danny grew up. But I did box competitively when I was younger. I was Western Canadian champ when I was 15 years old, and trained a little bit in that realm. And my kids are in martial arts, so I'm a big avid fan and boxed amateurly myself. But I was definitely not the champ of San Quentin or Soledad like Danny, where the boxing rules too don't always edge on the side of like amateur boxing like I did. You know, like Danny says in the doc, he's like, oh, I had wicked elbows, right? I cut you open right away with an elbow. And very, very different boxing rules that I grew up doing, that's for sure.
Chris, if you're curious, no, I do not have any experience in fighting.
Well, I do as well. I have experience maybe in
those distributors hard to make sure they don't overcharge us and we get the right distribution deal.
Yeah, well, I have experience in getting punched maybe in 2 or 3 bar fights, but that's about it.
Nice.
That's the breadth of my experience. But what I do like is that you guys bring experience from other realms into producing and filmmaking, and that's the one thing. I mean, you can go to film school for a craft, you know, like cinematography or whatever. Producer, at least in all my time of having met producers, that people come at it from the finance world, or people come at it and they're more producers that are story. And I do think that bringing different skill sets in as producers really do help put something together. And a lot of it is relationships, like you knowing Danny. What do you think that each of you brought from your various, you know, previous experience into just becoming independent film producers and being as successful as you are?
I'll let you go, Joe, because you said the tandem that Jhod and I have created, or the partnership that we've created in the last little bit, has been really unique in the documentary realm, because Jhod's had experience working for lots of people, and I have too. And we've really kind of found this niche using the Canadian financing system for documentaries, but being able to do it on icons like Danny, or, you know, Robbie Knievel, or now we're currently working on Michael Bisping. So I'll let Jhod tap into this one a little bit, because he's really, at times I'm trying to sell them to like our American partners and stuff, and they're always like, no, if they're not in Hollywood, they don't know. And I was like, no, that's the worst thing to think. Like, you can know a ton about the film industry nowadays and not have to live in Hollywood. If anything, I think sometimes us being in Canada and having a more objective look at things, you know, coming from a small country trying to reach a mass audience, I think actually gives us a competitive advantage. But this is where Jhod asset, I really piggyback him and help. I do the production side and Jhod does the distribution side.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. I think what we've been able to do is know the product we have in front of us, and just be so passionate about that, and know that world, and try not to speak outside of the world. And then when we have the final film, like Ice Guardians was this documentary we did on enforcers, and a lot of people didn't believe that that was even a market. And we had distributors mixing up the NBA with the NFL with the NHL, and it was very tough. But what Adam and I just decided is, we believe in this. We had interviewed so many people, and we know there was a market. So let's just build our own release around this. And, you know, from Ice Guardians, I signed up for Amazon Prime accounts, had our own direct channels, started working with Tubi TV, you know, met with Netflix, got rejected by Netflix 5 times before they actually took it worldwide. We released it in the UK, did, you know, basically $100,000 in the box office for a hockey documentary in the UK. So it was, we don't give up on our films, and we just know that it takes so long to get a film from, you know, step A to the finish line, that you have to put everything you have into it and squeeze every educational screening out of it, and partnership with organizations. So I think we found who our market was. We don't deviate from that. We really love and hope that there's spillover, because a good story is a good story. And that's where I think Inmate has come into. But it's knowing that we have each other to rely on to make sure that, you know, every ounce of energy goes into this, and we'll figure out a way to to finance it and then make our investors and ourselves proud of what we finished with.
Quick add to that, Chris, is that I know also something that, like, having Jhod so experienced in selling docs, right? Because he sold everything from this to I am Patrick Swayze, I am Heath Ledger. Like, we've worked on a variety to even more niche indie docs. Is that we know we don't have to take the first sale or the big distributor that comes with us if the deal isn't good, right? Because a lot of filmmakers get burned there. They go to a festival and they get excited. Somebody comes to them. I don't want to say any names. And they're kind of like, oh, well, they released this doc and they did this film, but the deal sucks, right? It's like no money, and they're gonna exhaust you in expenses and everything like that. That we know that, like, Jhod has relationships with all of them, Netflix, Universal, like, we can get there. So we're like, okay, no, we see that you're not passionate about the film, or you don't really have the correct release strategy for it. So we'll go ourselves. And it was interesting because we had a few of them really push back for Inmate, and they're like, well, we'll do this and we'll do this. And Jhod and I pushed back, being like, yeah, but it's one of like 100 films that you have and you're going to put no effort in. Like, no, thanks. We still know there's something better out there. And it was, a lot of them are shocked to be like, what do you mean you're saying no to us? Like, we're this group. And we're like, yeah, but the other people are going to take care of it way better than you. So we're not just going for the first offer. So I really think that comes with the years of experience at Jhod, especially with docs, because they're different than dramatic films. So you have to look at each film differently, or each genre, I should say.
Adam, I was going to say, I thought that your boxing experience might come in handy trying to collect from some of these distributors, these unscrupulous distributors.
Oh man, I wish you could do it that way sometimes. It's, this exhaustive reporting you get at times when you're like, you guys spent $100,000 in marketing? Where? Right.
Well, see, that's the thing. You brought up a really good point, and Jhod, you definitely can expand on this. When you talk to indie filmmakers and they're making the deal, I think a lot of them get caught up in just like, okay, what's the money I'm going to get? What's my upfront? What am I, you know what I mean? And I really feel like it's not just that. It's in addition to that, it's what are you going to spend and what's the marketing plan? I feel like that's almost as much or more critical than the money in the end is how it's going to be marketed, because that's a building process. And I wonder if you would speak about that. What in terms of like, what's going to make like what are the components of a really good indie film distribution deal?
Yeah, well, for me, one of the first questions I get when someone says, hey, we have an offer from here, do you think we should take it? I said, have you talked to any of the other filmmakers that have recently signed with that company? Are they returning calls? Are they sending statements on time? Did they do what, close to what they said they would do? It's really hard. You can never predict what's going to happen. But the first thing I would think you should do is go to the distributor's website, see what their new releases are, and then reach out to those filmmakers. They can't disclose everything, but that has to be a call. And I mean, I am a distributor. I mean, I know we're kind of crapping on distributors right now, but Adam and I had to find a way so that we could go more direct. So over the last 10 years, I slowly built up all the tools to be our own distributor. And then we found partner distributors, that areas that we couldn't access, like cable VOD in the US. We have some great people who we know pay all the time, and we partnered with them rather than going with someone who may be a little more flashy, but they became our partners. And when you have 6 or 7 films with one other person, that trust level is extremely high. So I think it's actually getting out there, and the homework isn't just about, are they reputable in the sense of they grab 10 films from TIFF or Sundance. It's, are they paying your type of film anything? Because you have to remember to classify who you are compared to everyone else. And if you're shooting too high, you're going to go with a distributor who, typically drops $20,000 just to make a marketing trailer. But if your film doesn't actually generate a huge amount of revenue, that's a silly cost. So, yeah, I mean, you just have to be careful and ask a ton of questions. We're all very rather accessible. So I think that's pretty important right now, is talking a lot. The digital space is really confusing and new. So I just encourage everyone to do that. And that's what we've done. I mean, we have some great friends who have helped us out along the way, not just on the creative side, but on the business side, and even finding your lawyers. And Adam, you have close friends who have done HBO deals and Netflix deals, and we help each other manage how to cultivate those relationships further.
Well, you bring up a really great point, which is that marketing component. It's so important, and there are so many tools now. You could just completely self-release something so that it's on most of the VOD platforms. Heck, you can even get it in drive-ins now, right? I mean, drive-ins have seen a resurgence, which is kind of cool, but I really feel that the smart indie filmmakers like yourselves are ones that kind of, it's a combination, right? It's like you have your own tools and you have your own pathways, and you have to use that to supplement what the distributor brings to it. And I wonder if you could, both of you, kind of elaborate on that. I mean, I just feel like that is such an important thing that not a lot of filmmakers know about. Like, someone has to be an ambassador for the film. I mean, for Inmate #1, obviously Danny's a great ambassador, right? Like, he's a sales tool.
Yeah.
You're a tool in terms of selling it in a different realm. But can you talk about what some of those tools and pathways are to getting that film out there and building that excitement?
Yeah, that's sure. That is a great point, Chris. I mean, that's where the Inmate's the first one with Danny that we've really had, like, because we landed a studio deal, so it's so fascinating and exciting to have this like machine behind us. But we're used to, like Jhod kind of mentioned earlier, with something like Ice Guardians, which we knew had a big niche audience and was built in. And I say niche because hockey, on the grand scheme of international sports, is on the lower side, even though here in Canada it's like a religion. That was one that we knew. We got offers right away and we were getting great reviews, but we knew it was being undervalued because people would just label it as a hockey film. And we knew we could do better. And that's where we built up social media, like, the stuff that Facebook, Twitter, now Instagram's the big one. You have to keep learning which one's the hot one and which one, and algorithms are changing. So it's making it harder for us to do that, but you can still connect with those audiences and make sure. And that's how we were able to do $100,000 in theatrical in the UK for a hockey film, is because we tapped into all those audiences and connected with them on Twitter and at arenas and the teams over there, that because they were niche, they didn't get much attention. So when there was something bringing attention to that sport, people would flood to it. Like, we did a screening in Cardiff in the UK, and it sold out in 20 minutes. And like, we thought there was a problem with the link, because people were like, I'm clicking on the link and it already says there's no tickets. We're like, no, impossible. We just released it. But no, they had to expand it to 3 different theaters. They went from like 100 seat to 150 to over 300 because it had sold out in days. So you have to, with your film, I know it's often forgotten because we get so busy and creative and trying to make something great, which great. That's what we should all try to do, is make something, especially in the documentary realm, that's inspiring and entertaining. But you can't forget about the business side. I mean, so many young filmmakers that, like, their whole business plan is like, well, we're just going to submit it to Cannes and TIFF and Sundance, and then it'll go there and it'll win and we'll go from there. But there are thousands of great movies that get rejected from those festivals, including all of ours. We're batting 100. We're 0 or 9 submissions on all those festivals. We get rejected all the time. We just wait for unfortunately, you didn't get in. Like, even with Inmate, like, even this one, we're bringing it to our publicists and stuff. They're kind of like, what? You guys didn't premiere at Sundance or Tribeca or Slamdance or less or any of those? Everyone's like, how did this not get in there? I'm like, that's a great question. You should ask them. Like, we didn't get in, but then we landed a studio deal, which is the whole point you go to the festivals to do, is to, you hope, you dream to land a studio deal, which we did, which Jhod, just by reaching out and showing them the film.
Yeah, I think, it's, again, understanding what film you have in front of you. All of our previous films were very like grassroots, almost too general of a word, but the communities were very well organized and you could reach them. Danny is a Hollywood celebrity, so it made sense. This was the first film we gave up all of our rights to, but it was to Universal. They know the Hollywood system, so they can reach out to all the various players, like the Entertainment Tonight's, the talk show circuit and stuff like that, that it warrants it. And then this film travels very well into other territories. So to have the weight of a Universal makes a ton of sense. And then on the flip side, there's just some docs we've done that there's organizations involved that actually have very big inroads that we could just target them ourselves. And to be honest, that's who we were talking to while filming. So how can a distributor know everything about every sport, every biography, every environmental doc? They can't. They need a lot of help. And if you can just provide the pass saying, this is who we've talked to, or these are the festivals we got into, can and you follow up with those festivals saying, we're about to release, can you just put on your social media channels that we're releasing on July 7th, and you can help. You don't want to take over, and you don't want to bully your way to become more of a pain, but your audience intimately, and the organization or the reviewers or bloggers who love that topic. So keep on it, and lend that 1, 2, 3 years of dedication you put into it, and that information you gathered to support the marketing side of it. And don't give up on your film. It takes a ton of work, but we have experienced that it's worthwhile because we knew our target market before we started anything, and we knew it existed.
Well, I've only seen Inmate #1, but I need to see Ice Guardians now because I grew up in Detroit, so I would watch the CBC. I know who Mr. Dress Up is. I don't know if Polka Dot Door, that was it Rocket Robin Hood. I know all this, but I used to watch hockey with my dad. There was hockey night in Canada. Yeah. We would go to the old Olympia Stadium and see the Red Wings. Yeah. So to me, hockey documentary, I am so in. So I want to talk to you after this. I definitely need to see. I need to see that film. And then you did what was your other documentary? Is that the Bruce Lee documentary?
Yeah, so Jhod and I have worked on several now, but we kind of started in the cannabis realm. Our first 2 films were called The Union, The Business Behind Getting High, and then we did one called The Culture High. And then in the background here, we worked on one with Ray Boom Boom Mancini called The Good Son. And then, I helped out on I Am Bruce Lee, not the new Bruce Lee that just came out like water for ESPN. And then we worked on Chasing Evil, the Robbie Knievel story, Ice Guardians, and now we're working on Bisbing. We've done Donovan Bailey's. We've done Grant Fuhr, the first Black player in the NHL Hall of Fame, and won 5 cups for the Oilers, and now Danny's, and now we're also started on Phil Heath, who's 7-time Mr. Olympia, and a bodybuilding documentary we're working on. So we've been doing this for 15 years and successfully and continually to make our films not only successful as far as the audience, but also commercially successful, where over and over and over again, our investors are getting recouped. They're getting their interest and their money back, and distributors are happy where we're coming back. We still have yet to land that Netflix original or that HBO original. We're still trying.
Oh my God.
We're still always banging on their doors. We get their meetings, but we haven't found that one. There always seems to be one piece missing. So we still have goals that we're trying to achieve, but we've been able to do this for almost 2 decades and really passionate about the stuff we put out there. So at the beginning, that's why we're letting you talk about Inmate the way you were, is that we knew we had something really special on this one. And even when the festivals we weren't getting in and things weren't going our way right out of the gate, we knew, we were like, okay, we've done this long enough. Don't panic. And we had to tell some of our producing partners, because you get those no's from Sundance and TIFF, and then everybody's like, oh, should we change the film? Should we re-edit it? We're like, no, stay the course. The film is great. Lots of great films don't get into the festivals. Don't base it on that. But I know every filmmaker, even us, you start to be like, is it a little too long, or should we adjust something? Like, it gets in your head, but we knew we had something special and we stayed the course, and it's now paid off. So to hear you say that was really, it was really awesome to hear.
Well, it really is perfect. Especially, it's a perfect profile of Danny. There's just so many things I didn't know about him. Maybe if he had only texted some of those festival Although Danny doesn't text, right? Machete don't text. Machete don't text. I love that, man. But the film is fantastic. So I definitely need to see your other work and Ice Guardians. I'm just personally, documentaries are my favorites. Whenever I go to a film festival, I always make sure to see the docs, because for a lot of times I'm not even sure I'm going to see them outside of the film festival. Yeah. For rights or whatever reason, they don't get as wide release, but wow, Inmate #1 is just fantastic. Before I let you guys go, I got to thank our sponsor, which allows me to do this, which is storyblocks.com. If you go to storyblocks.com/film threat, it's tools for filmmakers, everything from stock footage to cleared music to, you can find drone footage on there for your movies. So really? I have a lot of friends who are filmmakers. I mean, I'm working on 2 documentaries myself right now, and I use Storyblocks. So this is they help support everything that we do. So I appreciate it. And I appreciate you guys coming on the podcast to talk to me. You have to come back.
Oh,
So
I'd love to.
you have to come back
on, Chris, and enjoying our work. We as a fellow filmmaker yourself, this stuff means a lot and it helps a lot of us. So I love when I hear people that say they love docs first. That seems to be more and more common nowadays, when people are like, man, I docs are the first thing I watch and the thing I watch more. Like Jhod and I love to continue to hear that. We hope people continue to go down that route because we love docs, and we hope the golden age of docs, which the market seems to be right now, continues for a while yet, because we got lots of stories we still want to tell.
It's going to, I believe. I mean, look, the biggest thing this year, the biggest phenomenon on Netflix, Tiger King, right?
Yeah.
I mean, a documentary series.
The Last Dance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's just a different form of storytelling. That's it. And I really feel like when I go to see a doc, 90% chance I'm gonna enjoy the experience, even if it's just okay. When it comes to narrative features, honestly, in the indie film realm, it's kind of 50-50. It depends. Unless it's a genre, I'm a sucker for like horror and sci-fi.
Yeah, I am too.
I like the horror and sci-fi. I'm sorry. I don't know.
And I couldn't agree more, Chris. That I think that's when people say, why do you think, Adam, the documentary genre is getting so much more now? Is I think, one of the downsides, like everything, there's yin and yang with the technology getting so good and so much more content being available. When it's an indie film or scripted, I've been suckered to so many where I'm like, ooh, it's got so-and-so and so-and-so. How bad can it be? And then I'm 10 minutes in and I'm kind of like, how did you convince these actors to do this? This movie's horrible, right? But then with a documentary, if it's a genre or a subject you're interested, even if the documentary filmmaker is just learning and things are, I hate to even say not perfect or miss, because I respect anyone that takes, the challenge to create a great story. If I'm interested in that subject matter, I'm into it. I'm not going to come out of the documentary being like, well, they didn't do this right. And I'm going to be like, man, I liked it. I would have done some things differently stylistically, but it connects you already. That's almost your built-in marketing that a lot of documentary filmmakers have to think about, that when you release, like we do this, whether it's, the hockey film or something else, we know there's a target market already, right? So we know people are going to come see Danny Trejo just for Danny Trejo, but then they're going to find out so much more about the human behind the face that they see, right? So it kind of, we almost have our own marketing for it if you know how to tap into it. But that's the tough part. With all the content on there, how do you surface, how do you rise above everything else that's on there? But I know I told you, I warned you, you get me going here that you're ready to cut it
good.
I love your point about I'm the same way when it comes to dramatic stuff now. I'm much more inclined to tap into something factual just because there's so much out there nowadays. It's tough to really connect with something.
I think too with docs, it takes a lot of time to do. So you have to be very certain you want to tell that story, where there is a whole methodology about creating a scripted thing as fast as possible, getting it into production, getting it through post and out there as fast as you can. So, there are different business models. I've done both and there's different pressures on each of them. But if you spend 3 years of your life doing a doc, you better make sure that's a compelling story, because you've spent a lot of time on that topic.
Well, most doc filmmakers I talk to, the average is like 7 years or more on a document. I'm not kidding. And people I think forget that there are different genres of documentaries, right? I mean, your biographical documentaries for the most part, sports documentaries, music documentaries on different bands. There's social issue documentaries, marijuana documentaries. I mean that to me, there are so many documentaries on marijuana. What I like about it is I used to see more of them, like 15, 20 years ago. There were a lot more weed documentaries. Now there are fewer and fewer because I kind of feel like it's much more widely accepted, right? Especially here in Los Angeles, you've got your dispensaries. I am not a weed person myself, but I recognize the rights. I've seen it have such a positive effect on people for medicinal reasons or other people coping with stress and anxiety that it just needs to be. It should be. I feel like that battle's been almost won, not on a national scale in the United States yet, but
here in Canada, and actually our first two films, The Union and The Culture High, if you were to Google 10 marijuana documentaries ever made, they're number 1 and number 3 on IMDb, and they were both invited to Parliament Hill here in Canada to help educate politicians on the current bill that they passed to make it legal. It was the Liberals that invited us, and they made it legal in 2018. It's federally legal here in Canada now. Now they're passing different laws for edibles and different forms of consuming it. But both our films played a small part in helping to make that legislation become a reality.
That's amazing. I just heard of so many documentaries that can definitely move the needle of social change in certain arenas, especially when there are many documentaries made on a particular topic like that. It definitely changes hearts and minds. So, Jhod and Adam, I want to thank you guys. Jhod Cardinal, Adam Scorgie. I like what you put, Scorgie. That's awesome on your.
That's how they then get that. That's my Twitter handles and stuff. Because
that's perfect. It must be your gamer tag on Xbox too.
Yeah, I'm not very good on there, but sure, that is my gamer tag.
Awesome. Thank you guys for being on the Film Threat podcast. Definitely need to have you back again. You're just I really appreciate it. Thanks again for your time.
Chris, thanks for having us on. Appreciate it, bud.
Cool. Later.
That's amazing. Thank you. Bye.